Number 11. Okay, so let's go over. This should be the right one. You go to the chapter Quizzy. Wow, long chapter. Jeez. Goodness, running out of road here. Okay. So chapter 11, Quizzy Wizzy Wizzy. That up. Okay. So I told you I'm going to go around the room and see you guys doing it. So Charisse, can you give me number 1?
C.
It is C. Absolutely. The right answer is C. Look at A, B, and D. Why can it not be A, B, or D? There's things in each one of those that make it not okay.
A has commercial leases.
You're on the right track, but it's not because of commercial leases. It's something right next to that. You can do commercial leases. Those are rental agreements. But what in A, what can you not prepare because it's a legal document?
Deeds.
Deeds, right. So that's why it can't be A. Why can it not be B?
Promissory notes?
Yes, that's basically a mortgage. And it can't be D because it has mortgages, promissory notes in it, So when you're not sure what the right answer is, try to find something wrong within the other answers so you can eliminate them. And so you can do a process of elimination. So you can still pass the state exam even if you barely know what you're doing, just by doing good test taking skills. Okay, Cameron, what'd you get for number 2?
I wasn't so sure about this one, so I put C.
The right answer is B. So what does statute of frauds only mean? It only means it's in writing to go to court to make it enforceable. So that's what it means. So it says failure to comply would be the opposite, would be it's not in writing. So you go through it and you look and it is B. It would have to do whether or not that contract is in writing. And of course, that's enforceability. It's not about time frames. It's not about face value. It's not about illegal acts. Statute of frauds only has one meaning. It means it's in writing. Okay. Dionyse? Is it Dionyse or is it a different pronunciation?
I mean, Dionyse is how you say it, but it's Dionys because I'm Hispanic.
Okay, Dionys. Oh, D, like a D-E. Okay, Dionys.
Yeah.
What do you do for number 3?
I have A.
It is A. Okay, it says which one is not. By the way, this is the one that's on your school exam. One of the ones. I mean, you got 12 questions on your school exam, but this is how it's set up. Which one does not fall under statute of frauds? Well, if something is less than a year, it doesn't have to be in writing when it comes to a lease or a listing agreement or anything. When it's longer than a year, it has to be in writing because that's unusual. Good job. Okay, Alondra, what'd you have for 4? Oh my gosh.
I put A.
It is A. And when in doubt, longest answer. But remember, a valid contract has to have 4 things. It has to have competent parties. There has to be some kind of consideration. It has to be something legal, that you're doing. It has to be in. But if we looked at the other ones, it does not have to be notarized. That's acknowledged. It doesn't have to be witness, like a deed, and it doesn't transfer ownership by itself. So that's why it's not the other ones. Okay, Leslie, what'd you get for number 5?
I had D as in David.
It is D. Good job. Okay, let me see who I didn't pick on and who's here. Evelyn, what'd you get for number 6?
For 6, I put A.
It is A. Doing something out of love or affection is good. It's good, it's good, it's good. Good consideration. How good is it? It's really good. Okay, so let me start back at the beginning there. Charisse, what'd you get for number 7?
B.
It is B. It says which one is not in writing. So there's 4 different words for that. You could say verbal, you could say oral, you could say informal, or you could say parole. All of those mean the same thing, means it's not in writing. Okay, Cameron, what'd you get for number 8?
I got C.
It is C. When something has to be done, it's in progress. It's called an executory contract. So when you see the contract, it's not like it says executory contract at the heading. It says sales contract. But because you know something still has to be fixed or done, you know that it's in progress. And so you would call that, it's executory. And then when it's finished, you would call it executed. So it's vocabulary. Okay, Dorian, what'd you get for number 9? Looking for the false thing. Looking for what's false about a counteroffer. Oh, sorry. Oy.
Sorry, I'm late.
It's okay. I'm just seeing if people did their homework.
Oh, what number are you on?
I'm on number 9.
I kind of wrote 2 because I was stuck between 2, B or D.
It is D. You're looking for the false thing, and it says the offeree and the offeror remain the same. Not when you make a counteroffer, they flip. So it's like playing tennis. The ball comes at me, I hit it back. Now I'm the ball giver. So I'm the offeror. The other person receives it. So we switch positions back and forth. But if you weren't sure, how can we try to eliminate the other ones? So whenever I get a true or false one, I try not to think about what's true or false in the question, because it could be confusing. So I look at the answers and I say to myself, is this a true or false thing as far as the answers go? And then 3 of the answers are going to be true and 1 false, which means this is the one you're looking for, or 3 are going to be false and 1 true, which means you're looking for the opposite thing. So if we go through them and say true or false, we'll keep track. Okay, true or false, when it comes to a counteroffer, A, the original offer is terminated. Is that a true thing? When you make a counteroffer, does it eliminate all previous offers?
It does.
That's true. So we have 1 truth. Okay, B, true or false, when it comes to a counteroffer, the original offeror now becomes the offeree now becomes the offeror. So they change position. I just want to hug you. So it's a true thing, right? He doesn't want to get down. He wants to stick around. He likes the company. So that's a true thing. Then C, true or false, the contract is created when the new offeree accepts the counter offer. So isn't that true? When you accept the offer, now we move into a contract. So A, B, and C are all true, which means D is going to be false. And we're looking for the different thing. So the offer and the offeree remain the same. No, it goes back and forth. So that's false, and you're looking for the one that's different. Okay, Alondra, what'd you get for number 10?
I put A.
It's actually D, because it says not to terminate. So what terminates? Remember, terminate doesn't have to mean break. It doesn't have to be negative. It just means to end an offer. Well, we know that when you accept an offer, that would end the offer because now we're in the contract. We know death or destruction would end an offer. We know a counter offer ends it. We know rejecting it ends it. But if you extend it, that doesn't end it, it extends it. Okay. Alrighty. So number 11. Let's see who I haven't picked on in a while. Did I already bug you a second time, Charisse? Did you already answer too? Okay, so then, and I did Cameron, I did Alondra. Leslie, did I bug you 2 times?
Not yet.
Okay, so yours is next, number 11.
Number 11, I put D as in David.
It is correct. It is D. Absolutely. And then let me do Evelyn. Evelyn, what'd you get for 12?
For 12, I got C.
It's correct. It is C. Okay, number 13, going back to the beginning. Dionys, what'd you get for 13?
B.
It is B. You guys are on point. Number 14, Dorian, you want to do 14?
I got D.
It is D. It's all the above. Number 15, Cameron, did I bug you a 3rd time yet?
Not yet.
Okay, then you do number 15.
15, I put D.
It is D. Good job. Okay, Leslie, did I bug you 3 times?
No.
Okay.
16?
Yep,
16, I put C.
it is C. You guys are being perfect. Okay, number 17, Evelyn.
Oh, sorry. I thought I unmuted. I put B for 17.
It is B. Liquidated damages. The cash money, the deposit that's there is liquid. Okay, number 18. Let me see who I need to pick on. Charisse, did I pick on you 3 times?
I put C.
It is C. Okay, number 19. Did I bother you, Evelyn?
For 19, hold on. What did I put?
Okay, you're looking for the false thing about building codes.
I put A.
Correct. The seller does not have to fix the violation. They could sell it as is. And number 20, I'm going to bug Cameron one more time. That's what happens when you have a name that sounds like mine.
Give me 1 second. My screen's kind of slow right now.
Okay. Looking for the thing that's not required. They made an offer for a house built in the 50s.
What I put here, I don't think this is right, but I put C.
It's the correct answer. Okay. And it's not required. You don't have to get the house inspected for lead-based paint. You know it has lead-based paint. Anything built before 1978 has lead in it. You don't really need to test for it. There's a chance that maybe a previous owner stripped all the lead paint and replaced it with, water-based paint. But you don't need to do an inspection. The buyer doesn't have to inspect it for radon gas and for lead and all of those things. They just probably would want to, for asbestos and all that other stuff, because, you don't want to breathe that. So, but does it have to be done before you sign the contract? Nope. If it's before the contract, the owner's not even letting you in the house because you don't have a contract. Because in the contract, it will give you time to do inspections. You can put whatever you want because everything in real estate is negotiable. You could say, I need 10 days, 20 days to do inspections. And the seller either agrees, maybe they say, okay, you don't need 20 days, you got 5 days. And then you could say, well, 5 days isn't enough, I need 10 days. And then goes back and forth, and it either is an agreement or not, and they move on to somebody else. So you guys did awesome, awesome, awesome sauce. You did like amazing on the chapter quiz. You don't have to do chapter quiz 15 or 19 because, those are very insignificant chapters. So we are going to do chapter 12 and we'll see if we can do 13. It's, 13 is a lot. So we'll see if we mix them around, sooner or later we got to do them all, right? So we're going to do chapter 12, what we were trying to avoid, last night. And then let me put how many is on the school exam and how many is on the state exam. School exam. Let me count them real quick. Excel spreadsheet to another page. And move it to my other screen so I can look at it. Oh my goodness, every time I try to move it, it wants to. Me open details. So we do it without you guys seeing it. Okay. You guys can't see what's on my Excel spreadsheet, can you? You only see the book? Okay, awesome.
Yes, only the book.
Okay, awesome. So let me count the ways. Okay, so chapter 12. Let me see what's on your school exam. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So in the school exam, there is 9 questions. State exam, there is 9 as well. Okay, and I'm going to save that so I have it. Okay. Also, when I get to in chapter 12 in your highlights, unless Michael got around to it, you're missing 2 questions on page 284, but let me go on 284 and just see if he was able to update that. 284. 284, you should have question 28. Oh, I put it here for you. There's question 28. And then also question 95. Which, let me see where the local lender charges 4% plus 4 points. Okay, so question 28, that's that. And then question 95 is okay. Buyers made an earnest money deposit on selling the house. How much additional cash do they have to bring to closing? Okay, so it's cash at closing. Let me just find where it is. Cash at closing. It's going to be a math question, so I want to make sure I find a good example for you. Buy down is not important. I'm just scrolling through so you don't have to look at what I'm doing if it's making you dizzy. There's yield, cost of points, value. Yeah, they don't have it really good in one specific place. And I almost feel like it probably comes in a different chapter in a better way. Discount points calculation to value, discount loan servicing. I'll show you how to do it on the whiteboard because it's really not here in one nice little place on how do you calculate how much cash does the person need to bring to closing. Let me just check. Yep, it's not there anywhere convenient. Okay, so we're going to start chapter 12. This is a mortgage chapter. So you're going to have to learn all this stuff about mortgages and you're like, hey, if I wanted to do that, I get my mortgage broker's license. and make some money on that too. You can, but unfortunately, you need to know a certain amount of things about the mortgage industry to sound competent when you're talking to a potential buyer about it. So we're going to get into this. There's a lot of vocabulary here, and I'm going to jump into this discussion right now. Okay, so buyers expect you to know about this stuff, but legally you don't have to know about it because it's not your job to know. This is the job of a mortgage broker. But for the state exam and the school exam, you got to know at least a little something about it, so that way you can go ahead and pass the tests. So a mortgage is an instrument. Whenever they say instrument, they don't mean like you're playing the flute or the tuba. They mean that it's a piece of paper, and it uses property to guarantee the loan amount you're getting. So it pledges the property as collateral. Like when you go to a pawn shop, you're giving them personal property, a ring or tools or whatever, and they give you a loan and they hold on to that until you pay the loan, and then they give it back to you. And if you don't pay it back, they sell it. So when they do a house, it's a little different because there's this fancy word hypothecation, which is the answer for question number 38. And but what is hypothecation, so you understand? Real estate is different. It's like your car. You get a loan on a car and you drive the car off the lot. You get a loan for a house and you live in the house. The thing's not paid off. At the pawn shop, to get it back, you got to pay it off. So that's not true when it comes to houses and cars. You're allowed to possess the property that's actually being used to guarantee the loan. So, hypothecation means personal property or real property used as a pledge. You say, hey, if I don't pay you, you can take away this house, but the person gets to live in the house in the meantime. Same thing with the car. Hey, if I don't pay the car, you can repossess it, but good luck finding me because I'm driving the car somewhere else, So hypothecation is being able to use something that has already been pledged to guarantee the loan. So that's what hypothecation means. That is the answer to question 38. Okay, the parties to the mortgagee, not meaning a party for the mortgage. What do you call people? The mortgagor, the mortgagee. So everything we learned so far, anytime anything ends with an OR, it's the person who's giving something. Anything ending with an EE is the person receiving something. And people always confuse who the mortgagor and the mortgagee is. But if you think of it, what is being given? So the mortgagor gives a promise, I will pay you back. So that's what's being given. It's a personal pledge, a personal guarantee that I swear to you, I'll pay you back. I am making you that promise. I'm the mortgagor. So the buyer is the mortgagor because they're swearing and giving a promise that they will pay it back. The one who receives the promise, the mortgagee, is the lender. The lender receives the promise, and if they feel that you're a good character, that you pay your bills and all that stuff, they turn around and they release the money. So I just want to point that out because a lot of people get it backwards because what they think. They're thinking just of the loan. Yes, that's what you get, but what had to be given first? A promise. That's why they call it a promissory note, because you're promising to pay something back. Okay, so I beat that dead horse. And this is just a hint to remember. Mortgagor, there's O's, mortgagee. That's just another reminder. So the promissory note is the document that actually is the evidence of debt and it has all the details. It has the amount of the loan, the interest rate, when payments are due, how many years you have to pay, and what happens if you fail to pay. So that's what, these little things are all the things that you would see on the promissory note. And the promissory note is the loan document. Mortgage lien priority. So when you borrow money, you voluntarily allow the lender to put a lien against your property. And so the lien gets in the way of a clear title. To be able to transfer ownership from one person to the next, you have to have a clear title, like everything has to be paid off when you turn it over. So when you borrow money, you're letting the lender put a cloud on your title. This is all vocabulary words. That becomes a lien against the property. And the first mortgage that gets recorded is called the first mortgage. Duh. But additional mortgages, because people borrow money again and again against their house. So if they have equity in their house, sometimes they get a home equity line of credit, or, sometimes they build a swimming pool and they allow the swimming pool builder to put a lien against the property that's a secondary lien, or a fence, a third, or a roof, a fourth. So the first position, of course, is the strongest position when it comes time, if there's a foreclosure or a sale, who gets paid in what order. So the first to get paid is the primary position, but sometimes there's a thing called a subordination clause, not insubordination, but subordination, where the person who has the first position to get paid, they might allow the people behind them to get paid first. It's like cutting in line. And you say, well, why would anybody give up their position? So sometimes, let's say you borrow the big loan to purchase property, but then the owner did all these little loans, like these little lines of credit to build the pool or whatever. And let's say they didn't make that payment because they didn't have enough money. So they paid the mortgage first so that they didn't go into default. So the one that has the big lien against the property, they're satisfied. They're not going to foreclose on the person because they've been paid. But then the one that's second in line, third in line, fourth in line, etc., they try to force the sale of the property because the person's in default. So anybody can try to force the payment if they have a lien on the property. And so they try to push it into foreclosure so that they get paid. Now, it's very risky for them to do that. More, it's intimidation, because technically if the third or the fourth position force the sale, they're never going to see any money, because the majority of the money goes to the lender that gave the big loan for the purchase price. And then also they pay property tax and also other types of liens. And by the time it trickles down to them, there might not be anything left. So that's what it's explaining to you. Subordination is letting somebody else. So the one that's getting paid in the primary position, they might say, you know what? Instead of paying us, go ahead and pay these little guys, because they're the ones that are gonna try to foreclose on you. And we'll let you be late, or you can skip a payment. So it's all negotiable. Satisfaction of mortgage is the happy day when you've paid it. I love it. They say on a joyous occasion when you've paid the mortgage in full, you're supposed to get, in Florida, they're supposed to give you a satisfaction of mortgage. It's a piece of paper, and you're supposed to get it within 60 days from the time you've paid off the loan. So what it is a release of lien. So it's question 17, and it's called the satisfaction mortgage. So anyhow, satisfaction of mortgage is when you pay it all off and they give you a piece of paper that says you have satisfied the loan. Now, you would think the lender would go to the county or send send information to the county to release the lien. But guess what? They don't. They mail you a satisfaction so you can go do it yourself. And they don't do it because you can't mail in a satisfaction. A physical person has to go to the clerk of the court in the county where it's registered, and they have to present the satisfaction of mortgage in order to remove it off of public records. So the lender isn't getting any more money off you, so they don't care. They'll mail it to you and make it your responsibility. So if you care, you go down. Now, sometimes you don't want to record it. You want to keep it in a safe place so you can prove that you paid it off when the time comes when you want to sell it. But sometimes maybe you don't want to let the public know that this house is free and clear. Why do you think that is? Because you can look up on public records if somebody has a lien on the property. Why do you think an owner would want to leave that there, but keep the paper in a safe place, in a safety deposit box, until the time they need it? What are they afraid of? What do you think?
You're saying, I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand the question.
Yeah, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Okay, so you've paid off your house, and they give you a piece of paper that says it's been paid off. Usually, you would take that piece of paper and run down to the courthouse. I love that French bulldog. It's a blonde French bulldog. Oh my goodness. Hello. Oh, I've never seen a white one. Michael used to have a gray one. But anyhow, sorry. I'm loving all these dogs. My doggie died. So I don't have my doggie. My two doggies died. I don't have my dog.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. So I'll just live vicariously through your dogs because I don't want to have to worry about feeding them or cleaning
Come
up.
over anytime. We have a house full of dogs here.
Yay! I will come and give them love. So you've paid off the loan. They give you a piece of paper that says it's paid off. Normally, you would think the owner would want to run to the courthouse to remove that lien on their property so their property is free and clear. Why would they hesitate from doing that? Can you think of a reason?
Yes, but I'm going to say creditors.
Yeah. If somebody wants to sue you, they look to see if you have any assets. If they see you own a house, but then there's a lien because it's all recorded in public records and anyone can look that stuff up. If they see that you owe money on it, and guess what? When they see the mortgage, the lien, they see the original. It's not like the lender sends a monthly statement to the courthouse. Hey, they don't owe this much. They own that much. They own that much. No, at the end, when the whole thing is paid off, they give you that paper. It's called a satisfaction. And then you could take that paper to the courthouse yourself and get the clerk to remove the lien. Like if you go to sell the property, that's when you want to be able to show, hey, I don't owe that money anymore. That money you don't send to the person. You know, that property is paid off. You send all the money to me. You send that to the title company. But if you're afraid of being sued, then you don't want to record it. You want to keep it in a safe place. Because can you imagine you can't get another copy? Imagine you go to sell it and you're like, oh, where did I put that satisfaction? Uh-oh, lost it. And then you can't get a hold of anybody that can find.
So you can't?
I'm sorry? What was it?
You can't request a new one?
I said, what if you can't? What if that company has been sold many times and they can't find the record? You know, and then you're going to have to pay it off again. And that's no bueno, right? So there, you know, some people don't rush and record it. It's just something of personal preference because maybe they're afraid, you know, maybe they don't want their family to see that their house is paid off. Family meaning not their immediate family, but, you know, like the other ones, you know, for jealous people. There's a lot of NVIs out there, you know. But anyhow, lien theory states there's two different philosophies. On the school exam, it's going to be title theory. And it transfers, we're going to talk about that that transfers. There's two philosophies, and a state is one or the other. You don't have, okay, for some deals it's title, for some deals it's lien. No, the state is either one way or the other, and it's a choice by the government of, you know, in the state. So in a lien theory state, which Florida is, immediately they're going to mail you your title to your house or to your car. Because in Florida, the title doesn't mean that it's free and clear. You have to research and look up and see if there's any liens against the property. So a title company does this research. But that can be very confusing because in title theory states, the lender holds on to the deed until it's paid off, and only when it's paid off, they mail the deed or the title to the owner of the property. So in those states, the fact that you have the title in your possession has to mean that the property is paid off. You can see how confusing that could be. I'll give you a better example. So in Texas, their title theory. And I remember when I was in college that I knew somebody who came from Florida and sold their car in Texas, because in Florida, if you go to you can go to the tag office and you could say, I want a copy of the title of my car. That doesn't mean your car is paid off. They just print you a copy at $7. You can go and get a copy of your title. And it's supposed to have like lien holder, like, you know, whoever's financing it. But can you imagine you've paid off your car and then some people borrow against their car, they use it as equity, or they pawn their car or that kind of thing. And you might have the old title that shows that the car looks like it's paid off. And you go to Texas and you sell that car as a trade-in and say, okay, here's the title. And they assume, because you have the title in your possession and the title doesn't show any lien holders, they assume that it's free and clear. But that's a wrong assumption to make, because not every state has the same philosophy. You have it one way or the other. Florida doesn't care about the title. So what? You can print another one. You can print another title to a house. Doesn't mean anything, because they do the research, and a title company will check the public records to look for two things. It will look for the chain of owners. I think we talked about this in another chapter. The chain of owners, one after the other. And then they also do an abstract of title that says, okay, not just the owners to make sure there's no gaps, but what about building permits, loans, lawsuits? They want to make sure everything is clear. And that's why a title company charges you money to do the title research. So question 31 wants to know, in states that believe in title theory, what does the mortgage do? And the mortgage, the piece of paper called the mortgage, it transfers the title to the lender until it's paid off. Another name for the lender is the mortgagee, not to confuse that. Okay. Let's look at what's next. You don't need any of this on the rest of the page. It's just telling you there's the different parts of a mortgage, but that's not going to be on any tests. There's a paragraph. By the way, everything that's, at the beginning, these are paragraphs that are on your loan document. And when it has these paragraphs, then you read the paragraph to see what's the deal with it. They're going to have the headings, but sometimes there's nothing in the paragraph. Prepayment clause. If it has a prepayment clause, then you're allowed to pay off the loan early without any penalties. If there's a prepayment penalty clause, It means they're going to charge you a penalty if you try to pay off that loan too soon. They want to keep you around and collect interest off you for a while. Acceleration clause is like it sounds, to accelerate. If you don't pay the loan on time, the lender could say, I'm not giving you 30 years. All of it's due right now because you've defaulted because you haven't paid on time. Of course, you have a remedy. You can be forgiven. You receive it, seems scary because you get that in the mail. Hey, the whole loan is due right now. But you have the right in the state of Florida to pay the back payment and to get caught up within reason. I mean, it can't go on, months and months and months and months and months. So they're going to ask for it to accelerate, but you have the right to pay the deficiency and get back right on track with the rest of the 30 years. Right to reinstate is that thing in Florida. You have the right to, before foreclosure, to stop it and just to pay the back payments that are due. Due on sale clause, if there is one on the loan document, it means that everything must be paid off and clean. The title can't have any debt against it when you transfer it to a new owner. So that's a good thing. Because if there's a due on sale clause, that they've done the research to make sure there's no debt against that property. But sometimes there isn't a due on sale clause in one type of loan when you assume somebody else's debt. So if you had that type of loan, then you wouldn't see this paragraph that says sale. Defeasance clause, it just sounds wrong, like defeces. Sorry. The root of it is defeats. Every month when you make your mortgage payment, you are defeating the acceleration clause. They can't accelerate the payments if you're paying on time. They can't foreclose on you if you're paying on time. So just every single month by making the payment, you are defeating the lien. Here's a little summary, and question 16 on your school exam, the answer just might be here. So these are the name of different clauses. Clauses means paragraph, right? A term and condition. So question 16 might be worded like this. Which clause in a mortgage instrument allows the mortgage to advance the due date if the unpaid balance is in default? And what is that called? It's called the acceleration clause. Okay. Other things that you find on the mortgage document will mention how much down payment is required. Loan to value is what percentage the lender is going to give you compared to what it's worth. So they do an appraisal, and all of this stuff is, again, depends upon your credit, but there's 3 parts to a loan. And one of them can be weak, like a triangle, as long as the other 2 are strong, the base. And which one is weak doesn't matter. So your credit could be the weak one, but as long as the property has a strong value and as long as you put enough down payment, then the base is strong and they'll approve your loan. But it could be anything, but only one weakness in a loan. So for example, if the bank says, listen, we'll give you 90% of whatever it appraises to be. So then you have to come up with a 10% as the down payment. So down payment is also called equity, okay? Because you're putting down. The problem that happens sometimes is you might agree to pay for the house more than it appraises for. So the bank's not going to give you 90% of whatever you agree to pay for. They're going to give you 90% of what it appraises for. And if whatever number's lower. So if you got a good deal and you're buying it for a lot less than it appraises for, then they're going to give you 90% of the purchase price. But if it appraises high, they're not going to give you 90% of this. So whichever one's the lower. If it appraises for less than you agreed, they're going to give you 90% of the lower amount, which means you got to come up with a bigger down payment. Okay. Interest. I love this expression. Interest is the cost of renting money. It's the rent you pay for money. Can you say, oh, I need a rental? What do you need? A 3-bedroom, 2-bath? No, $1 million. That's the rental. That's the rental I'm looking for. Okay, so loan servicing is receiving the monthly payments. So when the lender collects the monthly payments from you, it could be the lender, or sometimes they hire a company to do the collection for them. And so you'll get a thing in the mail that say, we are servicing your loan, like SN Servicing, or there's different companies out there. So taking the monthly payments is what we call as servicing. And this could be the answer to question 58. Because, I'm looking at something on my other screen, which we won't say what it is. Okay, let's talk about escrow. What does escrow impounds mean? Things that need to be paid on a regular basis, like the property tax and the insurance. So you only pay those once a year, but the lender will want you to escrow in every payment 1/12 of what it will cost. So at the end of the year, you have enough money sitting in an escrow account for the lender to send a check to the insurance company, to the property tax office. So what they do is when you buy a house, people think, oh, I'm a veteran, I'm going to get a 100% loan, which you can with no down payment. You can, but no down payment isn't the same as no closing costs. You got to realize there's a difference. Like when they say you buy a car, no money down, that doesn't mean you don't have any money out of pocket when you go to the dealership, because they're going to charge you tax and tag, delivery fee, other fee. Okay, so what they do is they ask you when they calculate the closing costs, they ask you for 1 year in advance. You have to buy a policy and pay it off for 1 year for the insurance, and you have to pay the property taxes. And then after that, every time you make a monthly payment, you're paying 1/12 of what the bill will be for next year. So at the end of the year, there's enough money sitting in the savings account for the lender to disperse property tax and insurance. So that's what impound means. So when they say PITI, it means principal on the loan, interest on the loan, taxes, meaning property taxes, and insurance. So if they say your payment is PITI, it means it includes the principal, the interest, a 1/12 of the property tax, and a 1/12 of the insurance. So that's what that means. If you want to look at this example to help you understand it, the mortgage loan calls for a monthly principal and interest payment of this. So they just tell you this is the principal and the interest. At the beginning of the loan, almost the whole thing applies to interest first, and you get a little principal, and it's like a seesaw. At the beginning of the loan, the interest is high, the principal is low. At the end of the loan, interest is low, principal is high. And then they estimate the annual property tax for this and the annual insurance for that. So they take the property tax and the insurance, divide it by 12, because there's 12 months in the year, and your payment is adding the principal and interest plus the 12th of the property tax and insurance, and together that is called PITI. Okay, let's talk about discount points. It's not a discount. The name is discount points, but it's not like they're taking money off of anything for you. It's a way for the lender to make more money off you. So they add on these junk fees so the lender can increase their yield. Yield is what the lender gets back. So let me explain something, how the market works. Lenders whether it's a bank or whether it's a private mortgage company, they run out of money. There's only so many loans they give because where does their money come from? It comes from all the deposits that people have as a bank account, but they don't drain the bank, because if somebody walked in and wanted to cash out of their account, there has to be enough money sitting there to work. So the branch manager figures out what's a safe ratio to give out as loans and still have enough cash liquid to give people when they come to cash their paycheck, etc. So when lenders run out of money, they borrow money from other lenders, other banks. And your bank is paying interest on that money, and they turn around and they give you a loan from that money. Do you think they're going to charge you the same interest rate that they're paying? No, they're not going to make profit. So they add all of this junk. They call it discount points, loan origination fees, blah, blah, baloney, baloney, baloney. It's a way for them to make more money back. So loan origination fee is another junk. Loan origination fee is typically 1% or 2% of the loan amount itself. So a cash value, let's look at this. The lender is charging loan origination fees, bullshit fees, to make more money off you. So they're charging 1.5% of the new loan amount. So all you got to do is do the multiplication. If the loan is $250,000 and they're charging 1.5%, you just do the math. 250 times 1.5%. And so the cash amount of the loan origination fee in this scenario is $37.50. But what's the loan origination fee for? Nothing. It's junk fees. It's the lender is abusing you because they can. You need the money, and they're the ones that said they'll give it to you, and so they charge you discount points. Again, it's not discounting anything. It's just a name for them to charge you more and more upfront fees to increase the lender's yield. So how do they calculate it? 1%, it would be of the loan amount, not the purchase price of the house. They don't charge you on what you bought it for, they charge it on what you borrow. And then discount points, there's a rule of thumb that says every point they charge you is 0.125 of the loan amount. So let me get a whiteboard to show that, because we're probably going to do a math problem real soon about the discount points.
So very confused.
Yes, I'm gonna.
I've heard my father say it. I don't know.
Yeah, they want you to be confused because you can negotiate it. You don't have to accept it. Of course, they might say, we're not giving you the loan. And then you have to say, okay, that's if you're desperate enough, if you want the money. Let me just make this a little bit thicker. No, I don't want a vanishing pen. Where is the thing that tells me the thickness? Oh, here's the thickness. Maybe that's too thick. No, that's pretty good. Okay, so let's pretend you got a $200,000 loan. Man, I wish I had those pretty pens. See, on my laptop, I can do it with my fingertip or a stylus, but I have to use, the mouse on this one. Okay, so let's say the lender is charging you 3 points. Okay. Or they call it loan origination fee. It's the same thing. If they're charging you 3 points, every point is 1%. So 3 points is the same as 3%. 3% of what? Of the loan amount. I like decimals, so I'm going to use 0.03. So charging you $6,000 for what? Just so they say yes to give you the loan. And that's besides the interest you're going to pay and all the other stuff. But they're just charging you loan origination fee. Now, you might ask a lender, hey, before I apply for the loan and you pull my credit, do you charge a loan origination fee? They might not. You know, credit unions don't usually do that because they're there for the members. So a good thing before you start looking for a loan. Now, of course, you probably go to a mortgage broker and you let them do the work. But you know, mortgage brokers make money off of all the different fees that you pay. They get kickbacks from all these different things. So a mortgage broker, what do? They have somebody who needs a loan. They take your application and then they submit it to all different banks. And then some banks come back with an approval. One might say, oh, they got to put 10% down. Another one says 20% down. The interest rates are different. The lender is sending an approval to the mortgage broker. Then the mortgage broker looks at it. Oh, who's giving me the most fees? Who's giving me the most commission? So they don't necessarily look out for the interests of the borrower. They're going to look out, oh, who's going to give the loan amount with, you know, good terms, like less down payment, but I can still make a good commission off of them. So you don't have to pay them by law. This is fluff. This is a way that lenders make money, one of the ways. So if they charge you loan origination fees, 1% is equal to 1 point, or vice versa. 1 point is 1%. So 3 points, 3%. Percent of what? Of the purchase price. PP means purchase price. Not of the, oh, sorry, not of the purchase price. I just said the wrong thing. Not of the purchase price, of the loan amount. Sorry. I misspoke. The loan amount. You know, it's not my handwriting. It's because I'm using a mouse. Okay, so that's one part. But wait, there's more. If they charge you discount points, it's not a discount. Every discount point, not to be confused with the loan origination fees. This is something else. Every discount point is equal to 1/8 of 1%. 1/8 of 1%. If you do math, you know, if you ever want to convert a fraction to a decimal, all you got to do is use the calculator. 1 divided by 8 in your calculator should say 0.125, right? If you did the calculator, 1 divided by 8 equals, yeah, 0.125. So it's 0.125 of 1%. So what if they charge you 4 discount points? So if 1 point is equal to 0.125 of a percent, that means a portion. It's not 1%, it's a part of 1%. If I charged you 4 points, so 4 times that,
0.5%.
it would be 0.5%. So it would be 0.5 of a percent. So if it was a whole percent, it would be the number 1 in front of the decimal. Okay, so the reason I'm telling you all of this is because they're going to ask you, what is the true interest rate you're really paying? And they call that lender's yield, because that's the money the lender's getting back from giving you money. That's getting not only what they gave you, but the interest as well. So these are not, you don't have to pay these. This is just the lender to make more upfront money from you, because this is not included in your interest rate. They're going to quote you a pretty interest rate. Let's say they're going to say, oh, we're going to charge you 3% interest plus 4 points. So you think you're paying 3% interest. But the reality is, at the closing table, they charge you upfront a bunch of interest in the name of discount points, loan origination fees, bullshit fees. So when they ask you, okay, what was really the lender's yield? What real interest rate am I really paying? You could say, well, you're going to pay 3% over time. Again, what is the real interest rate I'm paying? If they charge me, for example, $10,000 up front, it's like interest, right? An upfront fee is another way of calling it interest because it's more than the money that you're receiving. So when they say they're going to charge you 3% plus 4 discount points, what interest rate are you really paying? You're paying 3% plus this calculation. Is it always going to be 0.5%? No. What if they charge you 6 discount points? Okay. So if they charge me 6 discount points, the decimal equivalent is 0.125% times 8. And mathematically times 8, that would be 1%, right? Because if it's 1/8%, hello, if there's 8 of them, that's 1%. What if they charge you 16 points? That would be 2%. What if they charge you 5 points? That would be 5/8 of 1%. So when they ask you, what are you really paying? You could just say, if they charge you 5 points, that would be 5/8. So your interest rate would be 3 5/8. The numerator is whatever they call it. So if they say 2 points, it's 2. If they say 4, it's 4. On the denominator is the number 8. But if they ask you to convert it to a decimal, you know, the decimal equivalent of 1/8 is 0.125. These are all negotiable, like anything in real estate. It doesn't lower your payment. This is one time they charge you up front at the closing table. They're not going to charge you this again. But if they say, oh, what does that really mean? If I pay all of this money, was I really paying 3% for the loan? No. If you add up all that stuff, that's why, like when you go to buy a car, you ever, like, the salesman says, oh, the interest rate, we have a promotion, it's 1.9%. And then you go back into the finance office and you're looking at the paperwork and it says truth in lending, the APR is 4.9. And you're like, oh, no. Hold on. I'm not signing this. The salesman said I'm approved at 1.9. How did it go to 4.9? And then the finance guy says, well, by the time we add the dealer fee, the electronic filing fee for your tag, the tax, the this, by the time we add all of that up and we divide it by your month, how many months your payment is, it's like you're paying more interest, which is true. So the lender's yield is the 4 point whatever. What they quote you, the interest rate is 1.9, but when they add all the junk, you end up paying more money over time. Does that help? Or, well, first of all, make you sick, but was that explanation enough? Maybe if we look at some of the math problems in the book, we can go step by step so you can kind of understand that. Let me erase this. Let me stop sharing that. Let me reshare my book. Let's see, is this where we're at? Yeah, chapter 12. Shire. Okay, we're back in business. Okay, so when you're going to do a math problem, loan to value, that's easy peasy. How much of loan is the bank going to give you divided by what the property is worth? Whatever that is mathematically is called the loan to value. The initials tell you LTV. L is for loan. 2 is like the division line. So loan divided by V is for value. So in this on the school exam, it's going to be a math problem. So they're going to tell you the information. So a purchaser security mortgage for $180,000. That's the loan amount. 180 is the numerator. The house is purchased for $200,000. What's the loan to value? 180 divided by 200 Your calculator is going to say 0.9, which is the same as saying 90%. You all know, I hope, how to convert decimals, and percentages in your head. So let's look at the second example. A home was purchased with a down payment of $60,000 and a purchase price of $240,000. What is the loan to value? Well, if the down payment is $60,000, that means the loan amount must be $240,000 minus the $60,000. So $240,000 minus $60,000 is with the down payment. So you already paid the down payment. So $240,000 loan, not purchase price. Loan plus the down payment, so that's the total purchase price is $300,000. So if the loan amount is $240,000, divide it by the entire amount, which is $300,000, the loan value is 0.8, which is 80%. Let's look at the third example. House was purchased with $36,000 down and a loan of $200,000. So that means the purchase price was $236,000, right? Because if you add the down payment plus the loan, the total is $236,000. Then it says monthly payments are this. What is the LTV? This is to confuse you. Do you need to know the monthly payments when you're calculating LTV? No, you only need two numbers. You need to know the loan amount divided by the purchase price. Well, we know what the purchase price is because it's the down payment plus the loan. So the purchase price is $236,000. That is the denominator. The numerator is the loan amount. Okay, the loan amount was $200,000. So 200 divided by 236, your calculator will say 0.8475. You can round that up to 85%. So if you put 15% down, what's your loan to value? Simple math. The total is 100%. If you put 15% down, it's 100 minus 15. What's left over? I see your lips moving, but I don't hear you.
Are you talking about the specific numbers?
No,
Because
forget
if you do 15,
the book. Forget the book. I'm just telling you verbally. Okay, the purchase price is, you need 100% the purchase price. If I put 15% down, how much of a percent of a loan do I need? 100 minus 15 is what? You can do it in your head.
85,000.
Thank you. Thank you. 85, not 85,000, 85%. If I need 100% of the money to buy a house and I put 20% down, how much of a loan do I need to get?
80.
80.
80. If I put 30% down, how much of a loan do I need to get?
70.
70.
70%. So it's not about the dollar amount, it's the percentage. So if I put 5% down, how much of a loan do I get?
95.
95. So once you know the loan to value percent, if the bank says, I'll give you 95%, then you go look for a house and you can find this house, it's this price, this house, this price, this house, this price. The bank's going to give you 95% of that amount and you come up with the 5%. Do not confuse down payment, which is based upon the purchase price, with all the closing costs. The closing cost is another chunk of money you're going to pay, but the down payment is based upon the purchase price. So if you need to put 10% down on a $500,000 house, $500,000 times 10% is $50,000. So you need to come up with $50,000 down payment, but that's not the end of it. You have to pay all the closing costs. You have to pay the insurance and the property tax and the inspections and the other junk they charge you, the loan origination fee, the points, all of that junk. So you think, oh, okay, I got about $40,000 in the bank. I think I can get a house. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's not enough money to close. So how much money do you need to come to the closing table depends on the loan to value that the lender's willing to give you. If they're going to give you 100%, you still have to come up with money. 100% loan to value is 100% of the purchase price. The closing cost is all that other junk fees they charge you. And, you know, the escrow and the property tax and the insurance and the loan origination fee and all of that stuff. Do you guys understand that now?
Yes.
Okay. So, as we said, a discount point, 1 point is 1% of the loan amount. So if you want to calculate the dollar amount that points cost, whatever the loan amount is, you multiply it by, if they're charging you 1 point, it's 1%, 2 points, 2%, 3 points, 3%. And that would be the cost of the points. If they change the question and say, okay, forget about how much dollars it costs you. What does that do to your interest rate over time? If we took all of that money and we divided it by the 30 years, are you really paying the 3% we quoted you? Or is it more when you look at it that way? So when they say lender's yield, they're asking you for the percentage of the true cost of the loan. So for every point, they say it's just a rule of thumb. You have to accept it. You don't have to worry about where it came from. You just have to, it's a rule. For every point, instead of calculating the dollars, every point increases your interest rate by 0.125% or 1/8 of a percent. So the lender's yield, this is what they're telling you here, is 1/8, and in the calculator, 1 divided by 8 is 0.125 of 1%. So if they charge you 4 points, it's like 0.5% of interest. If they charge you 2 points, it's like 0.25%. If they charge you 8 points, they're charging a whole percent. So your interest rate is not 3, it's 4. So this is how to calculate it. It's going to be question 28 on your school exam. And you're going to calculate, and the example they give you here is pretty darn close to the actual numbers on your school exam. So question 55 that we talked about before, on the previous page, they're asking you just to calculate the loan to value. How much loan are you getting compared to the purchase price? This question is calculate the real interest rate if you consider all of the closing costs involved. And so every point is equal to 0.125% of interest, or 1/8 if you like fractions. Now, whether you like it or not, the state exam might give you the answer in fractions, or they might give it to you in decimals. So you definitely need to be aware of how to convert it. If you ever need to convert it, you just use your calculator. A fraction, you take the numerator, divide it by the denominator, and that's the equivalent. So if it's 5/8, because they're charging you 5 points, 5 divided by 8, and it tells you, which is, I think, 0.6 or something like that. So that's how you're going to do question 28. So let's look at the example. A buyer gets a mortgage for $180,000. The lender agrees to pay to make the loan at 6% interest, plus 2 points. If they ask you to calculate the dollar amount of the points, every point is a percent. So then you would take 180 times 2%, and that's the dollar amount. But this one doesn't ask you the dollar amount. They say, what does it really mean, your interest over time? So they're charging you 6%. 2 points is the same as 2/8. You simplify the fraction. 2/8 is the same as 1/4, right? So if they give you the answer in fractions, it would say 6 1/4. If they give it to you as a decimal, what is 1/4? 0.25. So then it would be 6.25. You just have to convert. you look at the answers and you see, are they using fractions? Are they using decimals? And then you figure that out. Okay, assignment of a mortgage is when you give responsibility to somebody else. They take over the payments. We said yesterday, just because you assign it and the person accepts the assignment doesn't mean the lender is going to allow you to switch people on the loan. If the lender does agree, they do that word novation. We talked about it yesterday. Novation is substitution of names. But usually lenders don't like to do that. They like to keep everyone on the hook. They'll say, oh, we'll let you assume the loan. We'll add you to the loan. That's what they'll say. And they're just looking for more people. But if I'm selling a property, I don't want to be left on it. If you want to take over my loan, I want you to completely take it over in your name. So it's vocabulary is important. Not every lender allows assignment. So first of all, they have to allow it. If they do, it's called assignment of a mortgage. The person giving up responsibility is called the assignor. The one receiving responsibility, the assignee. There's a thing called an estoppel certificate. Estoppel is just to try to find the payoff balance. So if you buy a house from somebody and they have a loan on the house, not you, the title company is going to confirm what the payoff balance is to release the lien on the house. And that doesn't come out from the buyer's side. That's the seller's side. So the seller doesn't walk away with all of the money. Like you borrow $500,000 to buy a house and it's given to the title company. The title company looks, okay, the house is $500,000, but does the seller owe anything on the house? And then they minus and they clear the title and make it clean and give it to the buyer with a clean title with a lien from the new loan, whoever the lender is, whether it's a bank, whether it's a person, whether it's a mortgage company. Estoppel certificate is just to verify what is the payoff balance. Same thing when you trade in your car and you have a loan on it. The dealer calls the lender to confirm what is the balance due on the loan, and they pay the loan off and they keep the car. Okay. So methods of purchasing a property. You could assume the loan. That's one way. You could buy a loan subject to the mortgage. So a little difference in the terminology. When you buy a property subject to, the loan stays in the other person's name and you don't have personal liability to pay it back. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want someone to take over my payments like that. Another way to finance is called contract for deed, which is the answer to question 39. Contract for deed is owner financing. When the seller says, you know what, you don't need to get a loan, I'll finance it, just pay me, make me payments. It's called a contract for deed. So your name doesn't get put on the title until you finish paying paying the seller the balance. Once it's all paid off, then they go and record the new title with your name. They transfer ownership. That's a little bit, that's a little bit scary. At any point, can you imagine if the seller files bankruptcy and you're out of the house? But some people just don't have credit, couldn't get approved for a loan, and that might be the thing that they have to do. Okay, question 39 continues. What does the seller have? The seller has the legal title until the debt's paid off, like I mentioned. So that's called a contract for deed. Okay, you don't need to know about land loans. You don't need to know about construction loans. You should know a blanket mortgage. What do blankets do? An actual blanket? Covers. A blanket covers you. A blanket mortgage covers more than one piece of property. So a blanket mortgage is when like a developer wants to buy up several pieces of property and they just get a jumbo loan that's going to cover all of them. The problem with that is all the properties are used to guarantee that one big jumbo loan. So if they don't make the payment, all the properties go into foreclosure. That's the only danger of it. A partial release is sometimes you might borrow money to get this jumbo loan, but then you might want to sell one of the properties. So the lender has to agree to release the title from the loan package because, you know, all of the whole properties were used to guarantee the loan. So the lender has to agree to let it go. Of course, they usually ask you to pay off that portion, you know. You don't have to worry about a takeout commitment. Buy down. This is a financing technique that temporarily lowers the interest rate because the seller makes a deal with the lender. Hey, listen, I want to buy down their interest rate. So have you ever heard of a 3-2-1 buy down? Okay, I'm going to show it to you on a whiteboard. These are kind of interesting things that exist that if you've never heard of it before, now you know that it exists and everything in real estate is negotiable. Okay, so a 3-2-1 buy down. So the seller is saying, hey, lender, whatever interest rate you give the buyer, I'm going to pay 3% of it. The second year, I'm going to pay 2% of it. The third year, I'm going to pay 1% of it. The fourth year, the seller isn't guaranteeing anything. And then, of course, you don't trust the seller is going to be there every month to make the payment. So they just collect all the money from the seller at the closing for the whole period of the loan. So imagine you get approved at 6% and you're like, 6% interest. I was thinking I was going to pay 3%. The seller might say, hey, I'll buy down rate for you. So the first year, the seller is paying 3%. So you're paying the other 3%, and you're like, okay. The next year, you know, it is a 6% loan, but this year, the seller's only going to contribute 2%. So now you're paying 4%. The third year, the seller's only going to kick in 1%. So now it's costing you 5%. Oops, my goodness. This mouth is 5%. And then the fourth year, they're not contributing anything. So you're going to pay the 6% loan. But by the time you get that far, usually you've built up enough credit where you can go ahead and refinance the thing. So it's a way for the seller to get you into the house, because sometimes people don't qualify for their debt to income ratio at a higher interest rate because your payments would be higher. But if the seller's going to pay a chunk of it, your payments are lower temporarily, and you can qualify for the loan. And then with time, they go up. But everyone assumes they're going to make more money with time. So you're like, okay, I don't mind. I'm going to make more money next year and next year and next year. And in the meantime, I'm going to pay it on time and I'm going to refinance it. Interest rates got to come down. They went up, they're going to come back down. So this is how they're selling houses right now. Some people don't want to pull the trigger and buy a house because they say, oh, interest rates are high. I'm going to wait till they come down. Well, the interest rates have been down for the last 6 years. And now, you know, they went up. Yeah, eventually they'll come down, or they might go up more and then come down. Whatever goes up eventually comes down. The problem with it is when interest rates are high, you can find a lot of inventory of houses because nobody wants to sell because they have a low interest loan, right? Vice versa, when the interest rates go low, everyone wants to buy. So it's an opposite reaction. Interest rates are low, demand is high. Interest rates go high, demand goes low. And that's a problem with, we talked about yesterday, supply and demand. Okay, well, there's a lot of people who want it, but there might not be an inventory because people aren't willing to let their properties go.
Linda, so on that 3-2-1 buy down, who's
Yes.
paying the other? Who's paying the other percent? So if I'm the buyer is,
Yeah, the buyer's paying whatever they get approved at, 5%, 6%, minus the seller contribution. The first year, the seller pays 3, then 2, then 1, then nothing. So it's a way to get you in the house. I mean, it's not the seller's fault that your credit makes you pay a higher percent interest, but they're willing to help because they have enough profit in the property that they might be willing to let some of it go.
so
Again,
they,
it's
they take that directly out of the profit of the house that they're getting. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really come out of their pocket. They're not making monthly payments on that or anything like that.
correct, because I'm not going to trust that the seller's going to be there to pay on time. So then what they do is the title company calculates, okay, what would the total of those payments be? 3% of the loan amount, and then 2, and then 1, and the total amount, let's say it's $40,000, for example. Then they would take that from this. Let's imagine the seller owns the house and the house is paid off. They bought it 20 years ago when it was cheap, and now it's worth a lot of money because of the market. So they have a lot of room to play. So what if their house is, nobody really wants it. Nobody's been looking. It's an old house, but you got one buyer. And what's standing in the way of that one buyer? Well, the interest rate's a little higher right now. I think I'll wait till the interest rates are coming down. They'll say, no, wait, I got a solution. I'll pay some of your interest for you for the first few years. After that, you're on your own. You can refinance it when their interest rates go down. Okay. These are all interesting things. You probably never heard of these things before. They're all creative ways of financing. Okay, what is foreclosure? Foreclosure is the forced sale for many different reasons. Maybe people are going through divorce and they force the other person. Maybe you owe IRS. Maybe you don't pay your loan. There's a lot of different reasons, but foreclosure is when they force by initiating a lawsuit against the promissory note. That's the beginning of the foreclosure process. But you have the right to be forgiven. It's called the equity right of redemption. So if you're behind, you can just make the payments of what you're behind and get back on track. Whenever there's a foreclosure, definitely, if you're going to buy a foreclosure, caveat emptor, buyer beware, make sure that everything has been cleared, all the liens, all of that stuff. In a foreclosure, if they sell your property for more than you owe, they take out that and you get the surplus. If they bid like if the amount of the sale is less than what you owe, you can still be sued for the difference. So here they took your house, it's gone. You lost all that equity, all those payments you made over the years, and yet on your credit report, they still come after you. That's called a deficiency judgment. So, the lender can go to a court of law and say to the judge, I want a deficiency judgment, and that thing follows you around. So the next property you buy, there's a lien on that. And when you go to sell it, guess what rears its ugly head? But all of these things can be negotiated. There's another thing called a short sale, where you say to the lender, look, I lost my job, or I'm sick, or whatever. I know I can't make my payments. I have to let it go. But I do have somebody who will buy it, but they're not willing to pay what I paid for it, because when I bought it, the market was high. So they're willing to give you this offer. Do you accept? And so a short sale is if the lender accepts anything less than what is owed. The lender doesn't have to accept that. The problem with short sales is the lenders usually don't agree to go to closing for months and months. In the meantime, your credit's getting worse and worse. And at the end, they might not accept it. They might not close. And, then they take possession and they sell it, and it ruins your credit. If you can agree with the lender on either a short sale, or there's this next thing called a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So instead of foreclosure, you don't have to go through the court process. You give up the ghost. You say, listen, I'll just sign over the deed and you have the property. If the lender accepts that, because remember, the lender gave you a loan, but the lender is not the owner of the property. You're the owner. Your name is on the title, not the lender's name. They have a lien on your property for the amount that you owe them, but you are the owner. Your name's on it. So if you sign over that a deed in lieu of, instead of going to foreclosure, it's a negotiation. If it's a rental property, sometimes they have a receivership clause, which means if you're not making the payments, but it's like an apartment complex, then there'll be a receiver, a person who goes and collects the rent and gives the money to the lender to hold in trust, because you shouldn't be keeping the money. If you're renting it out and receiving, why aren't you making the mortgage payments? So that's what a receivership is. Lis pendens is when there's a lis pendens, somebody's trying to sue you and put a lien on the property. So when you're going through divorce, sometimes the spouse will put a lis pendens against your properties. Imagine you owned property before you got married. You own it completely, but there's something in the divorce that they say, hey, no, I don't want them to sell all these assets because they owe me, blah, blah. They file a lis pendens, and you can't do anything. You can't sell the property until they remove the lis pendens. That's the end of this chapter. It was a lot. Can you imagine if we did that after chapter 11 last night? No. Let's take a good break. Let's get back together at 8 o'clock. Okay. And maybe we finish a little bit early tonight. And, if we finish early, okay. Take a break. Enjoy your din-din.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Well, let's go into chapter 13. So this chapter on the school exam has 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. And on the state exam, it also has 4. Okay, so this is this actually works perfectly seamlessly with chapter 12 because it's a continuation of the conversation. So chapter 12 was getting all about into finance, and this is more about how the industry of mortgages and finances work. So there's a lot of vocabulary. Definitely, you should pay attention to that always. But there are 3 categories of loans, just 3 categories. So you have conventional loans, you have FHA loans, and you have VA loans. What's the big difference between them? FHA loans are backed by the government. And they're backed, they're insured by the government. They're not guaranteed. VA loans are guaranteed. So if the veteran does not pay their mortgage payments, the VA will come in and pay off the loan so the lender doesn't lose money. So lenders, there's no risk really to them, unless the person trashed the property. But it's, a pretty safe loan for a lender to give. And it's to encourage to help people that are coming back, from the military. And conventional loans are neither. They're not insured by the government. They're not guaranteed by the government. We don't need anything about the loan process. Don't need to know anything about credit scores or evaluating. Like I said, this is not a mortgage class. Qualifying ratios, we are going to get into that. FHA and VA have different ratios of debt to income. So how much credit card or personal debt compared to how much money you make. So we're going to learn about that in this chapter. We're not going to highlight it here. We're going to do it in the actual chapters. Don't confuse pre-approval with pre-qualification. Pre-qualification takes like a minute to do. Pre-qualification is just a math thing. How much you owe divided by how much money you make. That's whether you're qualified or not. That doesn't mean your credit's good or anything. It's just a math ratio to see how much debt you have compared to how much money you make. Pre-approval is when the lender says, no, we will give that loan to that person. And, you know, that's a strong thing. Definitely, if you're trying to buy a house and other people are trying to buy the same house, who will they take as a buyer? The seller might look at who's a stronger candidate. You know, this person's paying cash, this person has a pre-approved loan, or this person who hasn't even begun the process. So a pre-approval letter is definitely something you could include with an offer to show that you're a serious, strong buyer. So conventional loans, they have no government guarantee and no government insurance behind them. The lender is at total risk if the person doesn't pay. The government doesn't bail them out. Non-conventional loans, meaning everything but a conventional, is backed by the government, and that is FHA or VA. So there's only three categories. FHA and VA are backed by the government. Conventional loans, it's total at risk to the lender to take the risk. How much interest rate you pay just depends upon everything. Depends not only on your credit, but how about the property value. We already mentioned, we're not going to highlight it. We talked about assuming a loan. There's a thing called an adjustable rate mortgage, but we're going to talk about that further in the chapter. We already mentioned prepayment penalty in the last chapter. So if there's a prepayment paragraph, it would say whether there is a penalty or not if you pay off the loan early. Okay, down payment private mortgage insurance. It's called PMI for short. So conventional loans are not backed by the government. So sometimes the lenders want an insurance policy that protects them if they don't get paid. The insurance policy covers the loss of income for the lender. And guess who pays for that? Obviously, the buyer's paying for that. But if you put 20% down on a house, it's not considered to be a risky loan because nobody wants to lose 20%. So people usually will work hard to make sure they make their loan payments. If you only put 5% down or 3.5% down because you're getting an FHA loan, you don't have a lot of teeth in the game. So you might just let the payments go and live in the house as long as until they kick you out in foreclosure. So it's riskier. The less down payment, the more riskier the loan is to the lender. So we talked about loan to value ratio in the last chapter. And again, what's the loan amount divided by the purchase price? And that gives you the loan to value ratio. If the loan to value ratio is 80%, then the down payment is obviously the missing 20%. Okay, we talked about qualifying ratios for a moment. We said we'll talk about them more, and there's two different ratios. There's one called housing expense, and they call it HER for short. And the other one is called total obligations, TOR for short. Housing expense is only looking at what your house payment on the loan you're trying to get, house payment divided by your gross monthly income. So if you make $5,000 a month gross income, how much your house payment is of the money you make. So obviously they don't want it to go crazy. So for a conventional loan, they don't want your house payment to be more than 20%, 28% of what you make. So basically, if you want to figure out what's the highest payment you can afford, and you're going to go for a conventional loan, you take the amount that you think it's going to be, and you multiply that by 28%, and then you'll know what the maximum is. So house payment divided by your gross monthly income will give you a percentage. And as long as the percentage is less, oh My God, that scared me. Alexa, off. That scared the heck out of me. Ooh. What? That was scary. Nobody's in the house but me, and all of a sudden I heard those voices. Okay. So your house payment divided. Now, there's another ratio they look at, and that's on your school exam, question number 99. It's a math question. You take all your debt. So not only the house payment that you're estimating, but then they look at the credit report. What are the other things you owe? You owe a car payment, you owe student loans, you owe credit card debt. They take all of your debt that you have to pay monthly, and they divide that by your gross monthly income. And the name of that is called total obligations ratio. So there's also limits on a conventional loan. They don't want you to go more than 36% total debt. So your house payment, if you don't owe any other bills, your car is paid off, your credit cards are paid off, so then you're good. If you have your house payment is 28%, that's less than this 36%, you're good to go. But if your house payment is taking 28%, how much left over do you have? You only have another 8% debt with credit cards and everything else. Otherwise, you go over the threshold and you become a high-risk loan. So that's the little math thing. PITI, remember we learned last chapter, principal, interest, taxes, insurance. If they tell you the amount, like this example here, says the monthly mortgage payment is going to be $1,420. They're also going to pay PMI $96. And these are the other monthly payments that they're obligated to pay. So you would add them all up together and divide it by this gross monthly income and see what the percentage is. If your calculator says 0.36 or less, they're qualified for the loan. If it's more, they might still get the loan, but then they're going to have to come up with more down payment and different things. So the difference between HER and TOR, HER only looks at your house payment for the house you're trying to buy, divide it by your gross income, and then total obligations is everything, including your house. Now, they're not looking at, how much you pay for gas or how much shampoo or those things. It's not that kind of budget. They look at your credit bureau. What are you obligated to pay? And they divide that by your gross monthly income. Okay, different types of mortgages. So loans are what they call amortized. The root of amortized is amort. Mort means dead. So how do you amortize a loan? How do you kill off a loan systematically, little by little? Well, every payment you make kills the balance of the loan. At the beginning of your loan payment, the payments stay the same every single month. But how much of that payment you're making, how much it goes towards interest, how much goes to principal, changes over time. The first 8 years of your loan, almost the whole entire payment goes to interest and very little to principal. And over the course of the 30 years, it goes the other direction. So question 41 wants to know what is the typical situation, and that's it. At the beginning, the interest portion is high, the principal portion is low, and that changes over time. So that's what question 41 is about. This is an example of an amortization table. When you close on a loan, they give you not just this, they give you all 30 years and every payment. So payment number one, this much is interest, then it's principal. If you look at this, the amount they're paying every month is the same. That's identical. But how much of the payment is going towards interest? That's like 2/3 of it. And then it goes down, down every single month. The principal is the smallest amount, and it grows bigger and bigger every month. At the end of the loan, the balance is zero. You barely pay any interest, and almost the whole thing goes to principal. You don't have to memorize these charts. It's just so you know what it is. There's a thing called an adjustable rate mortgage, which means it's not fixed. Fixed means it stays the same interest rate all the time. But adjustable is one that you agree on, because everything in real estate is negotiable. And it goes up and down. It fluctuates with what's happening in the market and the overall economy. So it can go up or down, if things are good or bad. But the bad thing is it's hard to budget when you don't know what's going to happen. So if you have an adjustable mortgage, 1 month your payment's $1,000. The next month it could be $1,400, and that's a real hard pill to swallow. But why would people go for it? Maybe they think the interest rates are going to go down, so they want it to adjust, or maybe they just don't know any better, and they agree to something and they don't realize what that really means. So adjustable rate mortgages go up and down with whatever's happening in the economy, in the stock market, in the CPI, Consumer Price Index, and they look at two components to calculate that. They look at what's called the index and the margin, and question 9 is simply, what two things do they look at? Let me find the exact question. Yep, the calculated interest rate on an adjustable mortgage is determined by adding what two things together, index and margin. So let me explain what an index and a margin is. Sorry. So the index are tied to something, usually in the stock market, and this example is U.S. Treasury bonds. So if the index goes up, then that's going to raise your interest rate. The margin is the thing that remains constant through the loan. So, for example, I mentioned that lenders borrow money from other lenders when they run out. And how much that lender is paying interest on that loan fluctuate like a line of credit or a credit card. And so the part that remains the same always throughout the 30-year loan is the percentage of profit the lender wants to make off of you. And it's fixed. So if the lender says, hey, whatever the loan costs, you pay for that, and we want to make 2% on you. So what they're paying, what the lender's paying in turn to another lender, that goes up and down like a credit card. And they're like, whatever the cost is, we still want to make 2% on top of it as profit. So the margin represents the profit to the lender. It's fixed throughout the life of the loan. The index is the thing that fluctuates with the economy. You add the two things together, it determines the new adjusted rate. For your state exam, you don't need to know about interest caps, payment caps, teaser. In a mortgage class, you do. Like, they can't just jump your mortgage payment from $1,000 a month to $10,000 a month. It has to be like a gradual thing. It can't go up more than a certain percentage from the previous. So interest rates have caps, the maximum, and it can't go higher than 6% more than you started. So if you initially paid 3% and you have an adjustable mortgage, it can never go more than 9%. So, because that's 6% is the worst it could be. But the same thing negative. So let's say if you started out at 9%, it's not going to go down to 1 or 2%. The most it could possibly go down is minus 6%. So that would be 9 minus 6 equals 3. So that's the interest rate caps. Payment caps are, instead of saying interest rate, what is the highest payment and the lowest payment? Sometimes there's what they call a teaser rate, and that's to get you in the door. So they'll advertise interest rates, lowest they've ever been, 2% interest. Always look for the little small writing, because it might say on the first 6 months only, or the first payment, and then it adjusts to what it really is. So you always have to be careful and read the loan documents when you're closing on a loan. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about FHA. FHA is short for the Federal Housing Administration. They were you don't need to know the year they were created, but it is a government agency, and they're there to help people buy houses. And they do that through HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development. And what they do is the government steps in and they back up loans by insuring them to help people qualify for a loan. So if a lender's not willing to take a risk on you, then FHA will say, well, if it goes bad, we back it up with this insurance policy so that they feel safe. And this is when the crash happened. And remember, they talked about the bailout. Well, that was the government stepping in and paying off all of these loans. The bad thing is that they were, high interest. So that helps move the market if FHA is willing to step in. Also, the good thing about an FHA loan, it doesn't require much down payment, only like 3.5%. And that's why a lot of people like FHA loans, because they don't have to come up with a big down payment, only 3.5%. But of course, there's going to be credit score, debt to income, all these things that they consider. You do not have to worry about any of this because we already talked about 3.5% down in the previous chapter. Loan, you don't even have to worry about the loan limits. It is whatever the property is worth and what your credit can handle. Not only your credit, but your income level. FHA loans have mortgage insurance. If you don't pay a lot down, they ask you for some upfront mortgage insurance, like a whole year's worth. MIP is short for mortgage insurance premium. We talked earlier about conventional loans. The government's not guaranteeing, not backing them up. So then they have private mortgage insurance. FHA loans are government, so they have mortgage insurance premium as well. They just call it a different initial, PMI, MIP. It's the same thing. If you don't come up with enough down payment, it's a risky loan. And then the lender wants you to pay for an insurance policy to guarantee they'll get paid in case you foreclose. Okay, qualifying ratios are different, whether it's an FHA, VA, or conventional loan. A few paragraphs ago, we talked about your house payment can't be more than 28%. That was for a conventional loan. But FHA says it can go up to 31%. And FHA says your whole obligation can be 43% of your income. Remember back here, it was 28% and 36%. Let's see where it is. Okay, right here. Conventional loans said 28% and total obligations can't be more than 36%. So FHA lets you go into more debt. More debt meaning you could buy more of a house on your income. So they let it go higher. They let it go up to 31%. So a third of what you make can go to your house payment. And then the total obligation, 43%, almost half of what you make can go to all your debt together. Don't worry about appraisal. Don't worry about insurance commitment. Let's talk about VA loans. These are for veterans. So you can only get this if you've served in the military. So one of the many benefits for a veteran, and it's like an encouragement for somebody to join the military, is because there's a lot of benefits. There's health benefits, retirement benefits, there's educational benefits, and there's help in buying a house. So a veteran does not have to pay any down payment. Again, don't confuse down payment with closing costs. They still might have to come up with money at the closing table, but they don't have to put a down payment. Normally, that's a high risk loan and would have a high interest rate, but the government is guaranteeing the loan. Different than FHA. FHA is insuring the loan. VA, the government's guaranteeing the loan from the Treasury. So if the veteran doesn't pay, the government will pay off the loan from the Treasury. Of course, the veteran will have to leave the house. They don't get to stay there. And then the government seizes the property and sells it at auction. So the lender doesn't mind giving a high risk loan with no money down because they know the government will step in because they're guaranteeing the loan. There's a lot of things specific to a VA loan that aren't true about the others. So let me find them for you. So every veteran can get what's called a certificate of eligibility. And this would say what they are entitled to as far as VA benefits. They increase in value. So they never expire. So if a veteran doesn't buy a house now, 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later, their benefits never go away, and they do increase with time. Like everything with inflation goes up 3%. So the veteran qualifies for more and more and more and more each year, even though they're no longer in the military for years. The VA loan, they pay a 1% loan origination fee, and that's it. And it's called a funding fee. Here's a little comparison to help you try to remember which one's which. So these are the ratios. So for a conventional loan, they say your house could be 28% of what you make. For FHA, 31%. But look at VA. VA doesn't have anything. So VA, if the maximum obligation is 41%, so you could have a VA loan, if you don't owe debt, your house payment can be 41% of what you make, of your income. So obviously the veteran can afford to buy a lot more house. If you had 3 buyers and each of them want the same house, who would they be more interested in? Well, going with the veteran, because the veteran will get qualified for the loan much easier because their debt to income ratio is allowed to be much higher in their house expense. So you have to memorize these ratios, and they'll probably give you a math test on the state exam telling you how much debt they have, and you have to see what they're qualified for. So if the ratios are there, and assuming that they were in the military, they might qualify for all 3, but you do it mathematically. Again, closing costs is not the down payment. It's all the other things. Another special, by the way, what's unique about VA loans is anybody can pay the closing costs. So for the veteran, anybody can contribute and pay all the closing costs. So if you negotiate, you could get the seller to pay all the closing costs. And then there's no money down required. So no down payment plus no closing costs. A veteran could get into a property with no money out of pocket if they're good at negotiating. Assumption: all VA loans are assumable because they do not contain a due on sale clause. We said in the last chapter, a due on sale means all debt has to be paid off, but not with a VA loan. Anybody, and it doesn't have to be a veteran, can make an agreement to take over the payments on a VA loan. And as I mentioned before, VA benefits don't expire. They're also reusable. So if you buy a house, sell it, flip it, you still have your benefits. Do it again and again. There's no limit to how many times you do a VA loan. So if you've been in the military, you could flip houses using your VA benefits, using the power of other people's money. Just an idea.
Hold on. Can you go back, revisit what
I
you
knew
just
you
said?
were going to say that, Dorian, because I had a feeling you've been in the military.
So all VA loans are assignable because there's no due on sale clause, correct?
Correct. But the problem with that is if you let somebody take over the loan, then that interferes with the veteran's benefits. So let's just say that the veteran qualifies because of the amount of time they were in the military, and that's how they determine it. Not only how long they were in the military, but also how risky it was while they were in the military. So if they were in Afghanistan or, you know, someplace that's more dangerous, they would get more credits. So let's just say they have built up $400,000 in credits. So they could buy a $400,000 house with the government guaranteeing the loan. Well, let's say they find a condominium that's only 125,000. 400 minus 125, they still had benefits available. They could buy another property. What's the maximum amount of properties a veteran could buy using their VA benefits? Well, what's the definition of residential? 4 units or less,
Okay.
right? So a veteran could buy 4 condos and still get a VA loan for them. And that's with no money down. And you could convince, you know, like the seller to pay the closing costs. Sweet. Income producing. And don't
Thank you
confuse-
for going over that.
And don't confuse the interest rate with whether it's FHA or conventional. It has no difference. Some people think, oh, FHA or lower interest. No. The interest depends upon your credit. That's how it's determined. So you can get, you know, a rate according to how good your credit is. Okay. Now, when you pay off the loan, some people advertise, hey, you know, you can do a 15-year loan. That's an option. Or you could just make an extra payment. So instead of paying once a month the whole payment, you cut it in half and you pay every 2 weeks. You pay half of your normal mortgage payment. What happens is it pays it off quicker because what they do is every single month they recalculate your interest rate and your principal. So if the loan balance is 200,000 and you're paying 4% interest, okay, 200,000, 4% interest divided by 12, that's your payment. Next month they do it again. But between last month and this month, what has happened? You had some principal, maybe only $20, but now your loan is not 200,000, it's 199,980, and they calculate that by 4% divided by 12. That's your payment. And then the next month, it's maybe $20 less. So now your balance is not 200,000, it's 199,960. And so you're paying less and less interest every time they recalculate. So if you make payments sooner than once a month, you're just going to lower that amount quicker. And you probably shave off about 8 years worth of payments by doing that, by paying bi-monthly. I say bi-monthly. Bi-weekly is wrong. If it was bi-weekly, that would mean 2 times a week, right? Like if you bi means twice. So if you exercise bi-daily, you're exercising twice a day, right? So I always hate that when I see that because it's been this name forever, but it's not bi-weekly, it's bi-monthly. You're paying twice per month, but anyhow, who am I? Okay, the normal loan is amortized over 30 years, and they calculate that by taking, like I said, the loan balance times the interest rate divided by 12. That's the payment. Some of it's going to principal, some of it's going to interest. How much is going to it? That you have no control over. That's the lender. So they just tell you X amount of dollars and you do the math. Okay, PMM, purchase money mortgage, is when the seller finances your down payment. So imagine the lender, you think you're going to get an FHA loan and you want to get FHA because it's only 3.5% down payment. And you say, okay, I can afford that in the closing costs. But then they check your credit and this and this, and they say, no, you don't qualify for that loan, but we'll give you a conventional loan. You have to come up with 20% down. And you're like, I don't have 20% of a $500,000 house. 20%, that's $100,000 plus closing costs. I don't have that. So normally you would have to walk away from the property, but the seller might say, wait. Get what money the seller will, the lender will give you. If they're going to give you 80% of the money, I'll take it. And you can make me payments on the 20%. So the seller is taking a risk, but they're saying, hey, listen, I'll help you out. If you can't come up with it, just get what you can from the lender. And then whatever you're missing, I'll finance it. So that's called owner financing for the purchase money mortgage. It's not complete financing for the whole thing. That would be contract for deed. It's just for the down payment. I don't think I have to explain home equity. The more equity you have in your house, you can borrow against it. I don't think I have to explain that to you guys. Yeah. There's a thing that you might not know. It's called a reverse mortgage. And you've probably seen commercials on TV where there's an actor that's really old, you know, and they're, because you can recognize them, you're like, oh yeah, I trust them. Yeah. Reverse mortgage. What is old? Every chapter has a different definition. I'm almost there. For this, you got to be 60 years old. So I'm 60. Yeah, never thought I'd say that. So when you're 62 years or older, so my house, my house is paid off. So I might need to have some money on me, right? If I'm old and retired, I won't get a loan because you have to have income. So what I do is I say to one of these, and they don't call it lender. They call it like a reverse mortgage company, but they don't call them lenders. So what they do is they say, okay, we're going to buy back the equity. So just like when you paid off your mortgage payment, you were paying interest and equity. They're going to say, we're going to reverse the process and we're going to pay you back month by month. And every month you own less and less of your property. The good thing is you usually don't have to make any payments while you're still alive. Some of them are different. Some of them say minimum 10 years. So imagine that. I can take either month by month, or I could ask for a lump sum. And if I take a lump sum of money, okay, I can use that money not only to live on, but if I'm retired, maybe I open a business or my kids want to buy a house and I lend them the money. So I'm using the equity in my house. Of course, there's a risk. What happens in the end? Well, when I die, then whatever is equity left, whoever gave that money, they could either sell the property and give the remaining equity to the children who inherit, or the children could say, hey, wait a minute, we want to buy it back. So that's what a reverse mortgage is. A package mortgage includes real estate and personal property. So imagine you're buying a restaurant. It's not just the building, but what about all the stuff inside? You know, the furniture, the refrigerator, the washer, the pots, the pans, the silverware. So a package would include both real estate. If you bought a house and all of the contents, a package mortgage would cover both. So these are different types of loans. Okay, now we're going to talk about we've talked about so far about creating loans, what's the name of them, how do you qualify? But we're going to talk about, I'm sure you've heard people that have owned houses, they say, oh, my lender has already sold the loan to another bank. And then they sell it again and again and again, and you don't even know who to make the mortgage payment to. So there are three players in the market to buy existing loans, and you have what's called the primary market, and the three major players are savings associations, SA for short, CB, commercial bank, and credit unions. So they will buy existing loans. And why would a lender sell the loan and stop collecting the monthly payment? Well, maybe they need some cash flow. So a lender that has loans on the books will bundle the loans together, and they'll package them and sell them to another lender as an investment. And this is how the whole market crash happened, because they were putting a bunch of bad loans mixed in with good loans. But, you know, it's more sophisticated than that. So there's a portfolio, and they have a combination. So different types of organizations prefer different types of loan investments than others. And we're going to talk about the differences between them. So the primary market is where you would apply and get a loan. When they take your loan and resell it, that process is called the secondary market. So these are just the different players that are inside the market. So what kind of loans do savings associations like to give? Well, they prefer conventional loans for residential purchases, but they also can give out FHA and VA loans, but they like conventional. Commercial banks would rather deal with builders. They can do all three types of loans. Any lender can do any loan they want. Let's just put it that way. But what do they prefer? So forget about the types of loans. Let's talk about what do they focus on. So savings associations is where you want to go when you're trying to borrow money to buy a house. They're the biggest ones. And when we say savings associations, think of credit unions as well. So commercial banks, they like to do construction loans. They like to deal with builders, do short-term loans. So a builder will borrow money to build the whole 400 houses in a subdivision. A commercial bank likes that because they're giving one loan instead of giving 400 individual loans. So they like to deal with builders to deal with, you know, volume, and then the builder builds them and sells them and they pay off the loan. But savings associations and credit unions, they like to deal with the little guy, and they like to do residential loans. And mortgage lenders, they can do anything. You know, again, don't worry about what types. All of them can give every kind of loan. But what do they prefer is different. So this process, when you apply for a loan, is called the primary market. When they take your loan and bundle them and sell them to another lender, this is called the secondary market. You as a borrower are never involved in the secondary market. You can't control if they sell your loan. You are only involved in the primary market where you apply for a loan. Where should you apply for a loan depends on what you're trying to buy. If you're trying to buy a house for yourself, go to a savings association, a credit union. They're the best resource. If you're a builder trying to create a whole entire subdivision, go to a commercial bank. Mortgage lenders are not banks, but they do lend out money. Mortgage brokers are the people that find a borrower and a lender and bring them together. They used to call them mortgage brokers, and the new name is mortgage loan originator. So vocabulary. Okay, now let's talk about the secondary market. Secondary market is where they bundle up these existing loans and they resell them to another lender. And they do that to circulate the supply of money. Again, lenders run out of money, so they sell their loans, get another cash flow. Why do they do that? Because they charge you so many fees up front. They're charging you points, discount, which is no discount, all these junk fees, courier fee, secretarial fee, underwriter fee, all of this junk they're charging you at the closing. They could sell your loan at the closing table and they still made all that money off of you. Thousands of dollars. And then they sell the loan, get the cash back, and do it again to the next sucker. I mean, the next buyer. Okay. So, by the way, this word disintermediation, it's when you take your money out of the market. So imagine you're dealing with stocks and you have a Schwab account and you have a bunch of money in there and you invest and you change. If you withdraw your money from your Schwab account, that's called disintermediation. So in the secondary market, there are three major players: Fannie, Freddie, and Ginnie Mae. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, you probably heard their names, but had no idea what they're about. They're government agencies, and they buy up loans from different lenders, but they like to specialize in certain things. And you have to memorize this for the state exam. So I have little naughty sentences to help you remember it. Now, Fannie will buy anything, anywhere, any kind, anyhow. So Fannie, she's a naughty Fannie. She's a hoe. Fannie spreads her love around. Fannie doesn't care if she goes to a commercial bank, a credit union, a mortgage company. She doesn't care if it's a FHA, VA conventional loan. You got a loan, I'm buying. So Fannie will take on everything. So think of Fannie as, an open-minded Fannie. So Fannie will buy anything. Freddie Mac, it begins with an F. Let's think of it as Fannie's cousin. So Freddie Mac, he likes to buy up loans, but he likes to buy conventional loans. That's his bread and butter. And he likes to buy them from savings associations or credit unions. So Freddie Mac, I say he likes to hang out at conventions to pick up essays. Essay. Student assistant, Monica Lewinsky. If you don't know who that is, ask a friend. So Freddie's a pervert. He likes to hang out at a convention just to pick up essay. Student assistants, you know. So it's a way to memorize it. So Fannie is a open Fannie. She likes everything, every way, every how. She's not particular. Freddie is more particular. He likes conventional loans, but he only likes to get them from either savings associations or small banks like a credit union. He doesn't go to the commercial banks. Now, Ginnie Mae, it begins with a G. Ginnie. If you didn't see Forrest Gump, you have no idea why I'm saying Ginnie. But Ginnie begins with a G. Think of government. So what type of loans does Ginnie like to buy? FHA, VA, or conventional?
VAs.
VA. Begins with a G. Think of government. Think of G.I. Joe. Ginnie, G.I. Joe, or G.I. Jane. Doesn't matter. Jenny likes the military. So she likes VA loans. And it doesn't matter where from. It could be from a commercial bank, a private lender, savings loan. Doesn't matter. It's a VA loan Jenny's buying. So these are the three different players in the secondary mortgage market. Not where loans are created. That's the primary. They're in the secondary to buy existing loans to keep the money circulating. Okay, I think this is probably the last thing we have to talk about in this chapter. Let me just see for a second how much more we got to go. Oh, damn. Okay. Okay, let me go back to this. Okay, so now we're going to talk conspiracy theory. It's not even theory, it's a fact. It's called the Federal Reserve System, the biggest scam there is. Biggest scam. So across the United States, there are 12 banking zones, starting in Hawaii, California, going across and ending in Florida and Bahamas and, Puerto Rico over here. Every zone has its own Federal Reserve Bank in it. And each reserve has a person who manages that reserve. So here's the scam. If you are a bank within a zone, let's say you're in zone number 1 in Hawaii, California, every bank in the same zone must report to the Federal Reserve for that territory. The Federal Reserve says, you know what, for safekeeping, just because we're looking out for for the citizens, let us hold on to a portion of that money. So the banks, they receive people with bank account, savings account, and of course the bank doesn't let the money sit there. The bank gives out loans, they get interest on it, they invest it. Sometimes they make a mistake and lose money, but you don't know the difference because when you want to take your money out, it's there in the account. But the reserve in that territory, at their own free will, whoever manages it could wake up in the morning and say, you know what, for safekeeping, I think we need to hold in reserve 20% of your assets. So every bank in that territory has to give 20% of whatever's on their books from all of the different accounts. And they do it electronically. So it's not like they physically walk with bags or Brinks trucks. They do it all, it's electronically controlled. That's why on those movies with terrorists, they always show the numbers like going down the Federal Reserve, that kind of thing. They're electronically connected. So you can imagine if the Federal Reserve manager wakes up in the morning and says, let's just hold 20% of what you have. The bank managers are like, wow, I have less money than I thought I could give loans to people because the reserve is so high. So the higher the reserve, the less money the bank has to turn around and lend to people, whether it's credit cards, whether it's houses, whether it's cars, So what do you think is going to happen to the interest rate? If the reserve goes up, the supply of money goes down. What's the effect on the interest rate? It goes up. It's a zigzag ping pong effect. They call that an inverse or like an opposite reaction. So the reserve gets higher, meaning they're holding more money from the banks for safekeeping. And then that means the bank has less money available to give loans. So they're going to be pickier. You're going to have better credit, and they're going to charge you higher interest rates. Now the reverse. What if the manager wakes up in the morning and says, you know what? We don't need this 20%. We're going to give you back. And they're just giving back the banks the money that doesn't belong to the bank. It belongs to the people who have bank accounts, right? They reduce the reserve, which puts more money into the bank's hands, more money to flow in the market. What do you think is going to happen to interest rates? They're going to go down. Yep, it's a ping pong zigzag. So more money available, more competition to lend money to people. And of course, people with good credit are going to take advantage of the low interest rates. So everything is up and down. So that's what the Federal Reserve is.
So where do the Rothschild family come in?
Oh, well, they probably invented this. It's like me saying, oh, and here's the crazy thing. You know how we use the word discount points before? There's a thing called a discount rate, different than a point. This could be a Rothschild thing. So discount rate, the Federal Reserve says, you know what? I'm going to lend this other bank money, but they take it out of the pockets of other people. So it's me like saying, Dorian, I'm going to lend Cameron. Cameron asked me if he could borrow $500 until Friday. Sure, Cameron, I'm going to charge you 10% interest. Dorian, can I have your wallet? And I take $500 from Dorian, I lend it to Cameron, and I make the 10% interest when he pays it back. And then I give back Dorian his $500. See you, have a good day. Dorian doesn't make a penny off of it. This is the Federal Reserve System. This is what the discount rate is. I mean,
And
biggest.
that's what the Rothschild.
Yeah. By the way, just so you know what the expression means, a straw buyer is somebody fake. It's when they use somebody's credit, and it's not really a person behind it. It's, if you be careful of this. I had somebody ask me to do taxes for them, and they weren't, there's a way to go on IRS and get copies of your records. And when I did, I'm like, oof, what is this? You transferred $12 million in and out of your bank account? And she's like, huh? What? And if you know what a 1099K is, it's like credit cards, like when you process credit cards. I'm like, $12 million was charged on credit cards. And I said, did you sell $12 million worth of something on Amazon? And she said, no, I don't sell anything. I don't take credit cards. I'm like, look at your bank account. Look at this 1099K that IRS has. They think you made that money. Of course, it's not all profit, but they think you made it. So somebody had, there's people, especially at work, hey, these people pay me $1,000 a month just to use the leverage of my credit. So she did it, and it wasn't even 1,000. She made $700 a month. They gave her, but they had her register an LLC in her name only, getting an EIN, which is using her social to get the EIN. And then they opened up a merchant account to charge the credit cards in her name. And she can cry all she wants to IRS and say, oh, I didn't know they were going to do that. Why did you give somebody else permission to access your credit? Oh, they said they were just going to leverage my credit and pay me for it. I mean, I don't want to say, are you stupid? But come on. Can you be that naive? Nobody does something for nothing. So a straw buyer, it's fake. It's fictional. There was a lot of straw buyers back in the crazy days when the market was going up, and Countrywide got in trouble for that because they were, I think it was Miss Green was the notary. Her name was Miss Green, and it was like rubber stamping, notarizing all these documents for people that didn't even exist. So that's definitely fraud.
There's a realtor down in Miami, Mike Larato. I remember the story because my dad told me when he was working, but he would go and give $500 to the homeless guys and take their social and then pull out loans. They ended up doing a scene episode out of him, and like he's in federal prison now, but he ended up making millions of dollars off homeless people. He would go to the homeless camps and just give them $200 here, give me your social.
Yeah, and they don't care. They're not working. They're not using it. It's better. I remember back in it was like 2004, when everything was going crazy right after the hurricanes, and everyone was looking to buy properties, and the property values went up crazy, and this, that, and the other. And there was people advertising from Miami, because everything scammy happens in Miami. And I grew up down South Florida. I can say it. And they would advertise for people in like South American countries that have a social security number, but they move back home, and like to wherever, Venezuela, Peru, Argentina, whatever. And they would advertise to target that market and say, let us use your social security number and we'll pay you whatever it was, 5,000 or whatever. Of course, no good's going to come out of that. And so they made it look like there were people buying a property with fake W-2s and all of that and selling a house for a ridiculous amount. That is a big part of the crash that nobody talks about, was that kind of fraud. They try to make it like, oh, the big bad banks took advantage of people and charged them high interest. No, people who never should have applied for a loan, who know they don't have a job, who know that they don't have a credit. People were buying a $500,000 house that work at McDonald's part-time because they did loans that there was no income verification.
Miami happened.
Yeah. And then what they did is they got a bunch of loans simultaneously. It takes a while for the credit bureau to show on your social that you have loans. So maybe it takes a month or 2 months. So what they do is they close a bunch of loans within the same month, and you could have one person buying 400 houses, and with exaggerated prices, and there's all that stuff that nobody talks about, that part of it. That was the fraud. And everybody wanted to get a piece of it. So it was like they say in that movie, it was greed. So mortgage fraud, what what raises flags. They don't ask you any of that stuff at all. But obviously inflated prices in a neighborhood, something that's out of the norm, that could be a red flag, especially when they take advantage of people from like New York or California where the prices are a lot higher. They sell a property in Point Siena to them for $1 million that we know in the area, maybe it's worth 3 or 4. So, but for somebody coming from New York, wow, this is a 5-bedroom house on an 1.5 acres of land. Oh my gosh, So you don't have to worry about ethical practices. And when it's mortgage fraud, it's a 3rd-degree felony. Just so you know, equal credit opportunity, give everyone a fair share. Like I told you, before 1978, women couldn't have loans, but they're not supposed to discriminate. It's the same thing with the Fair Housing Act. Do not discriminate against race, color, religion, sex, handicap status, familial status, all of those things. So when it comes to credit, they're not allowed to discriminate. And also employment, but in credit, you can't discriminate for race, color, religion, sex. They don't say anything about disability. So apparently you can discriminate against disability because they wouldn't have the opportunity to pay back if they can't work. Familial status, if you have a bunch of kids under 18 years old, you can discriminate when it comes to credit, but these things you cannot. Age, if they're on public assistance, like if they're getting Section 8 or food stamps and that kind of thing, you can't hold it against them. One thing, and I just want to mention this, I remember when I was growing up, you'd go to a job interview and they would say, forget about what's your 5-year plan. They'd say, what are your childbearing plans? How soon are you expecting to get pregnant? Well, about 15 minutes. So I remember going to an interview and I was like in my early 20s and I was overqualified for the job. And they said, yeah, and you're recently married. So, how soon are you planning on having kids? They don't ask that to men, but they ask that to women. Now, do I understand the reason why? Yeah. Because a woman pregnant is not going to go into work. She's going to have maternity leave. So they're spending money training you and then you're not going to be around. I get it. But it's illegal. You can't ask somebody that anymore on an application. You can't even ask what's their age, but you can't ask them what year they're born, what's their birthday. So hello, you can figure that out. Truth in lending is to tell people the truth about what the loan is going to really cost them. What are all the fees involved? And when you apply for a loan, within 3 days, the mortgage company is supposed to give you an estimate of all of the closing costs. And that is because of a law called Regulation Z. So it's Regulation Z, which is a part of TILA, T-I-L, which is Truth in Lending. So that's where you would tell them, okay, this is the interest rate plus the discount points and this and that, and this is what your real interest rate is, and these are the closing costs, and. So it's to tell people, because maybe they can't afford it once they see what all the costs are involved in closing on the loan. There's a lot of bait and switch where they try to get you in by advertising a cheap interest rate, a low down payment, and then once you get there, they switch you just at a car dealership. No money down, sign and drive. So anytime a number is mentioned in advertising, it's what they call a trigger term. And it's any number, the amount of down payment, the amount of payments, the interest rate, all of that is a number. And if it mentions a number, they have to fully disclose all the terms and conditions. You ever go past Kane's Furniture on OBT or another location, and it says like no payments for the next 20 years? And then you go inside, and I don't know anybody who's ever qualified for that financing. Because you go in there and you start liking the furniture, and then you go apply, and they say, well, you didn't qualify for that financing, but we will give you, a credit line. And people, oh, okay, they sign, and the interest rate's something ridiculous. So anytime you put a sign or an advertisement that has a number in it, so like Kane's Furniture, no payments for 20 years, that's a number. They're supposed to disclose on the advertising who qualifies for that. I've never seen that on the sign. I remember years ago, my kids were like 18, 19 years old, and it was Christmas Eve, and those were crazy days. I was working, running the school and the restaurant and my tax business and doing appraisal. I was working like 20 hours a day. So it was Christmas Eve. I didn't go shopping. So I thought, what am I going to do? So I was pumping gas at BP on OBT, and I was right there in front of the Honda dealership. And it said on the billboard, $99 a month, your choice. And it showed a Civic and what's the other one? Not the Civic, but the next model. Okay. So it gave, and I said, that's it. Shopping done. I finished with the gas. I went across the street. I said, okay, hey, listen, it's Christmas Eve. I just need 2 cars. I don't care about the color. As long as they're automatic, I'll take, one of the Civic and the other one of the whatever. And, and 2 big bows so I can give them to my kids for Christmas presents. Because in my eyes, I thought, problem solved. I'll pay $99 a month. I don't care for how long, if I don't have to go shopping in the mall on Christmas Eve. And if my kids were getting a new car, I don't think they would care if they got anything else. They wouldn't expect it. So I went there. I said, listen, I'm ready to go. Let's get this done. Here's my driver's license, my checkbook. And the salesman's like, hold on. Did you look at the disclosure? And I'm like, I looked at the billboard. It says $99, your choice. Hold on. And he says, did you look at the disclosure? I said, where? There's nothing on the billboard. There was no, they said, look at the pinstripe. And I'm like, I don't care if there's pinstripe on the car or not. They said, no, look at the sign and look at the pinstripe. On the pinstripe of the car, on the billboard, it had the terms and conditions. It said, based upon a beacon score of 840. Really? It said with $7,000 acquisition fee, which basically means down payment. And it said a 60-month open-end lease. So you're paying $99 a month. Let's just call it $100 for 60 months. Okay, plus $7,000 down. And the only one who's going to qualify for that is somebody with the 840 beacon score, which I don't have. And at the end, you don't own the car. It's a lease. So if you want it, yes. So
For a Honda is ridiculous.
Exactly. So of course I didn't buy it, but that's how they get you. They just bait and switch you. They have the big sign, $99 your choice. And then the pinstripe on the car, if you had a magnifying glass with binoculars, maybe you could see it. And I was so mad. I was mad because I had to go to the mall.
On Christmas Eve, I would have flipped a desk.
Oh, I was ready to do a Teresa Giudice.
And this was all on the sign that they
All
said?
on the sign. But who's gonna look on the pinstripe? I thought it was like shadowing. I didn't look, I couldn't even see from, I'm at the gas station, the billboard's way up there. And they have the letters $99, like the letter size this big, and then the pinstriping like half an inch. So, but they get around the law by that because they disclosed who qualifies for that. When my daughter turned 16, get the theme that I really don't like to go shopping. I don't mind buying things, but I hate the shopping process. So my daughter is turning 16, so I had it planned. I know that the newspapers, because, you know, in my time it was newspapers, I'm going to get a newspaper when they come out, and I know that 7-Eleven gets them around 2 or 3 in the morning. So I went to 7-Eleven. It was a Sunday. I still remember it well. I took the Sunday newspaper because it has all the car ads in it, and I decided to go sit at Denny's and look at what kind of car I was going to get her, because usually on the last Sunday of the month, the deals are better and all this other stuff. So I was ready. So I read it. I found my Target. They just came out with a PT Cruiser. And because it just came out, they sacrifice a few just to get them on the road and get people excited and that kind of thing. So I saw an ad that said $59.99. I thought, $6,000 for a brand new car? Oh, yeah. So I go there to the dealership before they open. I'm there at 6 in the morning waiting for the first salesman to come so I can say, congratulations, you sold the car. And I even helped, the cleaning people came, and I got them donuts and coffee, and we're just waiting around. First salesman come, congratulations. I'm ready with my checkbook. Let's get this thing going. I need to get home before my daughter wakes up. It's her birthday. And they're like, slow down, slow down. And they said, it's a specific stock number. You ever see the ads and it has a stock number? You know, it's that car only. It's not all the PT Cruisers on the lot. It's that one. So I said, okay, for $6,000, I'm still going to be the hero. You know, she's 16 years old getting her brand new car. Okay. And they said, well, you probably don't want it because, you know, it's got roll down windows. And I said, it's good exercise for her. And then they said, you know what? It doesn't have carpet. It has like a mat. I'm like, even better. She can just use a hose to clean the floor. And then they said, it doesn't have a stereo. I said, fantastic. No distraction. She's 16 years old. Doesn't need to have a radio to be on. Well, it doesn't have air condition. I said, that's great. Her friends won't want to take a ride with her, you know? And so they were trying to give, and I said, so where's the car? Oh, it's in detailing. We go back to detailing. Where's the car? Oh, it's in this area. And baloney, baloney, baloney. For 3 hours, they ran me around the place. And then I blew a gasket. And I'm like, I'm going to get the news down here. And you guys are false advertising because you disclosed the amount without the terms and conditions and blah, blah, blah. You know, I thought I knew my stuff. And so then the manager, come down. We'll give you a really, really good deal, you know, on a better model. And, you know, sucker, I end up buying her like the limited edition with the leather package and the stereo and the power windows and the power seats and all that stuff. I mean, I did get a good deal. I got it, but I think I got it for 14, which was a good deal because they were like 22. But I went in there thinking I was going to buy something for 6, you know? So that's bait and switch. When they catch you with something that gets you in, and once they get you, they switch you to something else. But if they put a number in the advertising, it's a trigger term. Once it triggers, it has to be a full disclosure. Who qualifies for that offer? They have to be upfront. And if they're not, then you can, you know, get them in trouble. Okay, so let's talk about RESPA. RESPCT. Find out what it means to me. Okay, you know, I hope you guys get the references because, you know, I'm older and maybe you don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. So RESPA is another law that says, okay, you need to disclose everything. If there's any kickbacks, you know, if somebody's a relative, and so if you're selling them a house and you're recommending they go to a certain appraisal company or a certain lender because you're all related to each other, it's okay if you recommend people to your family that have a business, but you just have to be honest and disclose that's why you're sending them there. You know, you could say, oh yeah, my brother Mark, you know, he has a construction business, he can do this custom blah blah blah. That's okay as long as you or up front. It's not like you just send people there, oh man, this company, they were fantastic. They did such a job. And in reality, it's my relatives and I'm just trying to make something off of you. So when it comes to like purchasing title insurance and the other things related to real estate, kickbacks for, for draperies, for painting, for tile, for this, kickbacks are okay if you disclose that, and if it's something that doesn't need a license, like tile or painting or draperies. But if it requires a license, whether it's mortgage, real estate, appraisal, roofs, AC, all of those require a license, then the person you recommend, both of them have to have a license in order to share commission. So if I recommend you to a mortgage company and say, oh, they're going to take care of you, it's okay if I get a kickback because I have a mortgage broker's license. But it's different if I don't have one. So again, if it's something that needs a license, the people sharing commission or kickbacks, however you want to call it, they have to have the same type of license. So appraiser to appraiser, mortgage broker, a pool builder to a pool builder. But if it's something that doesn't need a license, then good. So if you recommend somebody to paint your house, do something to the garage, do pavers, all of that's okay. So that's what they're talking about there. Okay, so according to, by the way, Truth in Lending, the new name is TRID. It's the same thing. It says, like question 71, when do you have to give the loan estimate? And as I mentioned before, it's within 3 days, 3 business days. When someone applies for a loan, you have to tell them what it's going to cost. The reason it's 3 days is because remember, you have the chance you can cancel any contract within 3 days and get your deposit refunded. Remember that from the beginning of class? So that's why if you're going to use a loan, you need to know that you can't afford it so you can get out of the deal and get your money back before you lose it. So within 3 business days, they have to give you an estimate of what are all the closing costs involved with this loan. And are we almost done? Are we almost done? You don't need to read any of this stuff. Hallelujah. We're done. Hallelujah. That was a lot, right? That was a big. So letting you go 40 minutes early is well deserved so you can absorb it. Okay. Any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Miss Linda. Thank you for everything. Thank you for going back and explaining that for me.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. You're welcome, everybody. Bye.
Have a good night, Linda.
Good night. Hood office.
Bye. Good night.
Arrivederci.
Dorian, you're a little early.
Hasta mañana.
I've been working at 5 in the morning. This is late for me.
Well, last night I was up until 5 because besides this, I do taxes all day long. So I'm doing taxes up until I teach you guys. And then, then I have to, after I finish, now I'm going to have to spend a few hours doing the follow-up and seeing if the people were approved and emails and all that junk. The day before last, I hadn't slept in 48 hours. And you probably could tell.
We have a family business, a GC business, so we do complete models and everything. So cabinets, tiles, drywall, everything. And then I came in today at 5:58.
I would rather stay up till 5 than wake up at 5. But I slept at 5:30 this morning. I went to sleep and I had to get up at 7:30 because I had contractors coming and blah, blah, blah. So 2 hours of sleep last night, no sleep the 2 days before that. I'm going to crash. But hopefully it's not while I'm teaching you guys.
It's going to be a nice weekend.
Thank you.
I have 0 weekend.
Bye.
Have a good. Bye.
Bye.